Good morning, everybody. Baroness, Ma'am, sirs, ladies, gents. Gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the IET today. But a lot of hard work and effort has gone into making today happen, and I'm thankful to many people in the audience, whether the IET themselves, the Airspace Power Association, Mark Urban, thank you very much for your time, but also to my team that have worked feverishly to get us to this point. And when we sort of anticipated holding this event, we sort of planned it for 27-28. But things conspire against us, and of course we need to accelerate into the future, and therefore having this today is absolutely critical with everything that's going on globally. As Air Marshal Greg said, this is the first of the Battlespace Advantage Symposium that we plan to run. We have held a number of warfare centres coming together to talk about similar challenges over the last 18 months or so. But this now is really the graduation, and it's really graduating to invite a wider community, recognising that the future fight will be multi-domain, it will be complex, and we certainly won't be doing it alone. We'll be doing it through our NATO allies, and we'll be doing it with you, with our industry partners and our academic allies. Absolutely critical. So what do we face? And has it changed? If you look at the top left-hand image there's two photographs of a battlefield utterly destroyed. The furthest left is from the First World War. The one immediately to its right is Ukraine today. It doesn't look markedly different. You then look down and you look at the obstacles in the engineering and the utter devastation in the lower image on your left-hand side. And you would sort of say, well, that resembles, again, something that we'd recognise from yesteryear. But it's absolutely happening today. But that fight today, in that lower image, is absolutely calling on all 5 domains in order to glean slithers of advantage, as fleeting as they may be. That is a complex, contested, degraded, unforgiving environment that we are going to have to work through in the future. And if we don't work through it in the future, and we're not successful, and we are not able to achieve a degree of dominance in one or multiple domains, it becomes static really quickly. And we've all seen these maps on the news where the front line is and the inches that are gained or lost on a day-to-day basis because of that lack of dominance in any single given domain. But to overcome that, we also see staggering amounts of innovation, of adaptation and optimization. And the Russia that we see today is not the Russia that we saw in 2021, early 2022. It is complicated, it is sophisticated, it is agile, it is adaptable, and it's potent. That means that we all have to up our game. As we start to contest, we see that innovation at the front is happening at a pace that we've never seen before, where your software is updated in days, where your hardware is updated in a number of weeks, and in a number of months, we've got a completely different way of fighting. That is the rate of change. And so to overcome the electromagnetic complexities, the image in the lower right is the fiber optic that are now being laid to allow drones to go forward in that contested environment. And you can just see how strewn that town has become as a result of that adaptation of that threat. So what are we learning? The rate and scale of that adaptation is something that we absolutely need to, as a community, as defence, as allies, as partners, as industry, as academia, need to be alive to. When I have conversations with our joint commanders, they are not interested in me solving a problem in 10 years' time with a new ship, plane or tank. They want to know exactly how we're going to start to adapt and do that incremental adjustment on the flight with what we've got today. And that's really, really key. We're also understanding the power of combinations. If you cannot achieve dominance in all of the domains, what's the bare minimum you need to be able to deliver your effect, whether that be kinetic or non-kinetic? How do you create that space in time, that wormhole, to deliver your effect with the precision that's needed to make sure that it absolutely hits 100% of the time? We also realize that actually, whilst you can't see what's going on in the electromagnetic environment or in space, it's fundamental. If it's not there, our way of living changes. If it's not there and understood, we are not going to be able to get out of that trench. Our Ukrainian partners are really sophisticated when it comes to exploiting both space and the electromagnetic spectrum. We have foot soldiers in trenches testing the environment, reprogramming their hardware, and then stepping out of the trench. We're a long way from that, but we need to get there. We need to raise the consciousness, the understanding, the ability to operate in a contested environment, and we're not there yet. Uncrewed systems could be the panacea, but that's not what we're seeing at the moment. And so as you put robots to war, you put uncrewed systems to war, they do not replace traditional fires. If you go back to that first image, the complete obliteration of the landscape, the denial of terrain, the ability to hold terrain through fires, you are not going to be able to achieve that with uncrewed systems. You may partially achieve it, and you may temporarily achieve it, but traditional fires still have their place. And then the economics of warfare. How do we become increasingly effective, efficient, but crucially, how do we endure in this fight? Year 4 of the Ukraine-Russia war. How are we going to prepare? How is our industry going to prepare? How are our suppliers and our raw material and our supply chains all going to make sure that our magazine depth is sufficient to endure the future fight? Absolutely critical. And when we take a shot at a $50,000 drone with a $3,000 missile, the economics just don't stack up. And we're seeing that adaptation, and we're seeing that being learnt in the Gulf today. We're seeing our Ukrainian partners exporting their insight, their knowledge, and their wisdom and their lessons to the Gulf today. And then the battlefield, we would say, is translucent, not completely transparent. Yes, ISR is increasing. Yes, it's ever pervasive. But there is still the ability to combine the art with the science of warfare. The incredible task where, whether it be Spider's Web or whether it be the Ukrainian incursion into Kursk, shows us that actually deception, denial, the ability to surprise is still a part of how we must and should continue to educate our military leaders and thinkers. So that leads us to today and why we thought this was so important to achieve this symposium, to have this dialogue with you. And what are we trying to do? Well, in its simplest terms, we're trying to raise the profile of the fourth and fifth domain, of the EM spectrum and cyber and space. But in an ideal world, we want to erase those domain boundaries. We want them to integrate. We want them to come together. We want cyber and space to be the things that you think about at the start of the plan, not bolted on at the end. Guilty, I've done it. So how do we start to normalize what has historically been a compartmented or a highly secretive way of warfare? And how do we mainstream that thinking? We do it by talking to each other, by understanding. Now, admittedly, we can't talk at the classification where we would have a free-flowing conversation about these things, but it starts. Understanding the community, having a relationship is absolutely fundamental. And so with that shared understanding, we're hoping to drive the future. We know that this won't be a one-off event. This is a continuum now where we enter a relationship with each other and we continue to talk. We are looking to shape our leadership, think about multi-domain from the get-go. How do we manage it? How do we operate it? And how do we score advantage in it? There's a huge amount to do with integration, technology, and information, and everything that I've talked about so far is absolutely underpinned by the data that we have. We are a data-rich set of organizations. But I would almost challenge us to say how much of that do we turn into information and insight? Really, really difficult. And then we want to strengthen our relationships and interoperability, but rest assured at the bottom line there is we are going to capture all of this goodness. I will attempt to summarize some of the key points tomorrow as we close the symposium down. But beyond that, my team in the front row, all staring at me, are also capturing lessons, and we will turn that into product and activity, and we'll play that back to this community, so you can see our journey. But more fundamentally, what are we doing across defense right now to get after that threat and get after that environment to gain that integrated advantage that we see? Well, we know the Strategic Defense Review was pretty fundamental for defense. It shone a light on many of the challenges, many of the lessons. And I was really thankful that each of the military commands were able to submit propositions into the process to highlight where we thought we needed to improve. CSOC alone submitted 13 propositions. It actually was the foundation stone for transforming from Strategic Command into the CSOC, to highlight the need to have a command that was focused on the cyber and EM domain. Then we go into defense reform, and we are probably midway through that reform. We now have some significant structures with the military strategic headquarters now commanding the 4 military commands, much clearer accountability coming down, and we have a National Arms Director that is going to centralise the procurement and drive of future capability. Absolutely fundamental to becoming more efficient, more effective, and building in that endurance. And then within the Cyber and Specialist Operations Command, we have some headline programs. So we have already, in December of last year, created the Defence Cyber and EM Force under AVM Tom Ashbridge, set up at Corsham. We are building a digital targeting web already. And a year ago, I had a team of 3 people looking at targeting. I now have a team combined with a National Arms Director of 70 people looking at targeting. And we look to continue to go further to accelerate that change. And then the digital warfighting group. As we see from our Ukrainian partners, we have people with technical skills, coding skills, right at the front line, able to adapt, able to optimize in flight, in the fight. And then the bit that's probably closest to my heart in the Warfare Centre, and I'm really pleased to say that throughout the next 2 days, we have all 4 of Defence's Warfare Centres represented and speaking. It's not a week goes by where Cy doesn't send me an email about something. So thank you very much for that. We are, in an unwritten code, agreed that the way that we solve problems is not by trying to gain advantage over one of the other warfare centres. When a new problem or task comes in, the first thing we do is get together as a group of 4. We then work out who has got the advantage, and then we are supporting. And that is happening today. I have people down in Portsmouth today tackling the very thorniest of problems. So that community is alive. But we lacked authority, and we lacked capacity, and we lacked governance. That is now all in place through the MSHQ, where we created a new 2-star position, ACDS Futures and Force Development under AVM Mark Ridgway. That is at now our cohering point. And when we need prioritization, when we need direction, when we need people to listen to our insight and our observations, we now have a solid foundation in MOD that's able to lobby on our behalf, fight our fights, win us resource, win us priorities. And that's happening already. And then lead command, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail, but essentially having CDS now command the 4 military commands, and for joint capabilities, have that delegation through CDS into General Rob for a whole bunch of joint capabilities, means that I can now operate across the community with that authority to cohere us around capabilities that historically have been really challenging to deliver defence. So, the need for warfare development. I will let you read that. We are the 4th Warfare Centre in Defence. We are the newest Warfare Centre in Defence, but we have a rich heritage, as Air Marshal Greg highlighted there, not only in our badge, but our journey through JFC, into STRATCOM, and now CSOC. So we're learning and we're growing, but we're also trying to set some boundaries. I am not about buying future equipment 10 years hence. I'm about looking at the current force and how I adapt that through using conceptual and warfare development techniques to make sure that we can beat our adversary today and tomorrow. And we've got a working title, again, much debate across the warfare centres and with our MSHQ partner there about should it be 0 to 5 years? Should it be 0 to 2 years? Should it be 0 to 3 years? And the debate goes on, and thus it ever was. The time frame is less important. The conversations we're having is utterly critical to it. We know that we need to go faster. And then within the Integrated Warfare Centre, what are my boundaries and what am I trying to achieve in a pretty evolving and rapidly evolving picture? So I've pulled in an element of DC-DC in the conceptual and doctrine part of the world. That they are now integral to the Integrated Warfare Centre. I am trying to shape and influence Defence's understanding of force development in the round, but specifically around warfare development. and we are building a CSOC force development model as we speak. We have lead command, and again, I'll come back to that. We are becoming that warfare center for the CSOC, but we also have a role in supporting the MSHQ. So those integration tasks that I do across the joint and operational level as the warfare center of CSOC in support of CJO or DSF or DG Med and the others, I also have a similar role where I'm doing that on behalf of the MSHQ. So my authorities come from three places. They come from a set of orders from the MSHQ that allow me to rove across defence. They come from operating on behalf of CJO, where I will go and solve joint and integration problems for that individual, or they will come through these lead commands. And it's these lead commands that are really fundamental to the way that we're changing defence today. As I said, a year ago, we had 3 people trying to integrate targeting across the whole of defence, working on behalf of MSC and the Milstrat Effects team in the headquarters, but woefully undergunned. The SDR, with our proposition into that, highlighted this as an area that we had to get better at. With some seed-com funding, we now have 70 people, and we are growing. And the reason that I've grouped Cyber, EM, C4, and Intel and ISR is you can't really talk about one without the other. So they are all talking about using the defence digital backbone, filling in the gaps where they exist in the backbone to start to accelerate the passes of data to achieve those effects. But we also have another 3, medical, SOF, and the integrated global defence network, all fundamental to raising the ability for us to operate in the seams of those domains. And that's what those capabilities do. And the other military commands also have a series of lead commands, and the list will continue to grow. But it's the centralisation of that authority under the Chief of Defence Staff, delegated into General Rob for these 7, and then executed at the 2-star level, where I hold targeting myself, to try and make it more coherent, more integrated, quicker, adaptable, and able to achieve advantage. But the ecosystem is also critical. So again, what does this slide now show? It shows that you all have a place on this slide, that you all have a place in conceptual and warfare development, that we as a community need to come together more often to solve our thorniest of problems. So at the top, I discussed how we now have a military strategic headquarters, 2-star, looking after our warfare development. We have the 4 warfare centres, and we're all very different, and you're going to get a flavour of that difference throughout the next 2 days. Land has 10,000 people. Maritime 160, integrated warfare centre 160, and the air and space is about 1,000 people. And we all do slightly different things, but we all care about the same problems. And it's how we go about tackling those problems that's critical. We know that we're going to need a maturing and growing relationship with the National Armaments Director, with the critical capabilities in there, with defence innovation, our pipeline to solving new warfare problems, with our Defence Science Technology Laboratory, the ability to look at really low TRL and emerging technology and research and turn that into capability. And then the capability centres, our ability to have a warfare centre within the NAD, or at least something that feels like a warfare centre, where we can talk across how we're going to interface critically with industry and academia in the NAD role. And then the importance of our international relationships and our allies, who are also, every time I talk to them, worried about the same things we are. So how do we come together to solve those? So hopefully that set the scene for the next 2 days. I will be around for the entirety of the 2 days, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you. And without further ado, I think we're pretty much on time. Thank you.